Hello YouTube and all ships at sea. I'm Kevin, and as it says in the description and down below if you're on my channel, I'm a hobby woodworker. I enjoy making period furniture, 18th century, late 18th century, early 19th century, federally inspired pieces. If you're on my channel or go to my channel, the background is a cherry pencil post bed that I built for my wife and myself. It's not quite done. I still have to turn the finials for the top of the posts. I'm in the process of turning those now. But now for something completely different. My wife is a violinist, and she has two violins, one good, one very, very good. And she plays Scottish music, but she would like to have a Baroque violin to play this music on. And a Baroque violin is a pre-19th century configured violin. In the 19th century, Baroque violins were converted from what they used then, gut strings, to steel strings, to give them a greater voice for the large concert halls that were being built. Prior to that, they all used gut strings, and the neck to bridge angle was not as pronounced, and the actual configuration structure of the violin was slightly different. Get into that in more detail later. So how does someone who is not a luthier and has never built a violin or an instrument in his life get started in building a violin? You buy a kit. So I went to Stuart McDonald, link in the sidebar. They supply mostly guitar stuff, but they do sell a violin and a mandolin kit, so I bought their violin kit. And it comes with everything you need to build a basic violin, a basic modern violin. So I have to backdate this violin a few centuries. Well, for instance, it came with a neck and a nice ebony fingerboard, but I'm going back prior to the period when ebony was being used, so don't need that. Going to be using a tiger maple neck. This is more period. I'll zoom in here. You can see the figure in it a little bit, and you'll notice that there is some inlay all the way around it. That matches the purfling on the violin. I'll get to the purfling in a minute. But this is the neck that's going to go on the violin. It's period correct. It's a bit shorter. It'll have a lower angle. Other things that came with were a modern bridge. Stretching out because I'm not going to zoom in. This is a Baroque bridge. You'll notice the difference. There's less wood in the Baroque. So the modern bridge goes over there. Chin rest. They didn't use chin rests. Tailpiece, not period correct, goes away. I'll keep the pegs because they're fairly close to the pegs that you would have seen in a Baroque violin. So like I said, it comes with all the parts. The back is glued to the sides. I wasn't happy with the way they glued the back to the sides, so I separated them. I took a small cabinet scraper and I forced it in between the sides and the back and worked it all the way around until I separated the two. When I got them apart, I found the binding in here was not quite configured right. It needs to be beveled, and this wasn't. I found a few glue failures, so I had to fix those. Not a problem. Also, the violin comes symmetric from center to side. Violins are tapered from center to side. They get thicker here and they're thinner down here. It's for vibration. You know, I'm learning. So that has to be graduated. Before that happens, I'll get into graduation in a second, you have to add the purfling. And that's this thin layered wood that goes into a dado that's cut completely around the violin. You see it as I zoom in. See this dado? It completely goes around the violin. The grain in the violin goes this way. What the purfling does, if it cracks or checks, it prevents it from propagating all the way across and out of the violin. It's also kind of good looking too. So I'm going to put the purfling in, and the purfling comes straight, and you have to wet it, heat it, and bend it in place until it matches the curve here. Unfortunately, when I started that with the stuff that came with the violin, it started to delaminate. Basically, it's junk. So I went to a real violin shop, regular violin shop, ordered some purfling from them. This is really high quality stuff. Didn't cost a lot, but I'll use that to replace the purfling that came with the violin. Now, back to the graduations. Once the purfling is in, I can graduate the back and the top. How do I do that? Well, first you have to find out where the graduations go. So I bought a set of plans for a Stradivari violin, And you'll notice the graduations I've marked on the back of the violin. I've also done it on the top plate. And to get the depth that I need to graduate those is a two-step process. You know, in furniture, anything with wood, you have to make stuff to make stuff. So I started with this. This is nothing more than a depth graduation tool. There's a screw ground to a point. I have a little anvil. It's a carriage bolt. Yeah, that's what it is, a little carriage bolt. And you set that depth to whatever depth you want on one of these graduation lines. Say it's 3.8 millimeters. And you go and you put it on the 3.8 millimeter line and you press down. It puts an indentation in the wood, and that way you won't go too deep. You can't put the wood back. So you just go down to where that little hole ends, and then you blend between the two. Well, how do you know if you're really where you want to be? Well, I made this. This is a caliper. It's a very large caliper. I got a nice, cheap digital dial indicator from Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight link in the sidebar. You can set it to inches and millimeters. I set it to millimeters. You turn it on, and you make a little mark. You do a little carving, and you go like this. You lift the anvil, you place it down there, and you say, "I'm close." Not quite there. Oh, damn it! I took out too much wood. So you got to make tools to make stuff. So once it's graduated, then I can start the assembly process. The bass bar, I said I'd get back to that. It's nothing more than a piece of spruce that is fitted to the inside of the violin under the bass string, and it adds strength to the back of the violin, and in this particular case it's going to be a lot thinner and a lot lighter than in a modern violin. So I think, oh yeah, you know what, the most important thing, how am I going to carve that wood away? You know, you can tell this is a really high level production. You have to plane the wood away. Plane that wood away. That's a hand plane. This is one of my smaller hand planes. This is a Stanley Bailey number 4 that I bought at a flea market, and I restored it, put a nice little iron from Lee Nielsen Tool Works in there. Lee Nielsen in the sidebar. They build heirloom quality tools that I can't afford. Yet, anyway. What you're going to use to graduate your violin are luthier's planes, and that's a luth. Oh wait a minute, you can't see that, can you? I got to zoom in. Look at this little baby. This is a luthier's plane, or finger plane, or thumb plane. It's tiny. This is my finger. It has a tiny little iron in it. That was a whole lot of fun to sharpen. It's made of bronze. It's a fairly quality tool. It's made by Ibex. But what I found is that the curvature on the sole of the plane was not quite right for getting inside the inside curvature of a violin body. So what I did is I had to reshape in this dimension. I had to reshape in this dimension. On all 3 of them, I've got 3. Here's the smallest one. Oh, it can't, look, it had a hard time focusing on that. That's the smallest one. And this, focus, 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 is the largest one. Now, once I get the graduations around the violin close, I'll use this little spoke shave, which has a rounded sole in two dimensions, to clean out and get between those 2 places. Now, to hold this while I'm doing it, you make stuff to make stuff. I got a jig. You take the violin plate, you place it in the jig, and now you can work on it. You got to make stuff to make stuff. I think I've covered everything for the first video. Oh, how does one go about finding out the dimensions and measurements and all that kind of stuff for a Baroque violin? Well, you buy a set of handy-dandy plans, drawings of a Baroque 4/4 violin and bow typical. These are Scott Antes of Flagstaff, Arizona does these. They're drawn by a guy in Troy, Vermont, Fred Lebert. You can actually find these on eBay, but there's a luthier supply. I'll try to find the link and put it in the sidebar that sells plans for quite a few stringed instruments. And this is not for someone who's never done this before. This is for someone who's actually built an instrument before. I'm using it as a reference, and the plans for this violin marry the 2 and put it all together. I've been woodworking, building furniture and boats for a long, long time, so I have the skill set. I just have to take that skill set and apply it to this. So that's basically it. The adventure is building a violin at least 10 minutes at a time, documenting on YouTube. This should be interesting. The next video I do, I hope to show you carving out a bit of this, maybe doing a little bit of graduating, a little more on the history of Baroque versus modern violins, and that happy accident that happened to Stradivarius and Guarneri violins. Yeah. Until next time, have a great